The first thing you should know about me is that I never liked being alone. Not really. People often say they enjoy solitude, but for me, silence had always felt heavy. It reminded me too much of the years I spent hiding who I was, pretending to be someone else so the world would feel comfortable around me. So when I decided to go hiking alone that weekend, it wasn't because I loved solitude. It was because I needed space to think. Life had become complicated. A recent breakup had left me feeling hollow, like someone had quietly removed the center of my life without warning. My apartment felt too small, my city too loud, and my thoughts too restless. A friend suggested the mountains. Just go somewhere quiet, she said. Sometimes distance helps you see things clearly. So early Saturday morning, I packed a small backpack, grabbed my old hiking boots, and drove 3 hours north to a national park I had never visited before. The air felt different the moment I stepped out of the car. Cooler, cleaner. The trail began with a narrow dirt path surrounded by tall pine trees that swayed gently in the wind. Sunlight filtered through the branches, painting moving patterns across the ground. It was peaceful. Almost too peaceful. For the first hour, I walked alone. The only sounds were birds, wind, and the steady rhythm of my boots against the earth. At first, my thoughts kept drifting back to my ex. The memories, the arguments, the quiet realization that we had slowly grown into strangers living in the same space. But as the trail climbed higher into the mountains, those thoughts began to fade. Nature has a strange way of quieting the noise inside your head. Around midday, the trail split into two paths. One led toward a scenic overlook according to the sign, the other disappeared deeper into the forest. Without thinking too much about it, I chose the forest path. That was where I met him. I noticed him before he noticed me. He was sitting on a large rock near the edge of a small stream, his backpack resting beside him. He looked relaxed, one leg stretched out, the other bent as he leaned forward to fill a water bottle. For a moment, I considered quietly walking past. But the sound of my boots on gravel caught his attention. He looked up and smiled. It was the kind of smile that felt genuine, warm, easy, unguarded. "Hey," he said casually. "Hey," I replied, slowing my pace. "Nice day for hiking." "Yeah," I said, "perfect weather." Up close, I noticed he looked about my age, maybe early 30s. His dark hair was slightly messy from the wind, and there was a calm confidence about him that made the quiet forest feel less empty. He gestured toward the stream. "Water's freezing, but refreshing if you need a break." I hesitated, then shrugged off my backpack. "Why not?" I knelt by the water and splashed some on my face. It was cold enough to make me gasp. He laughed. Yeah, that was my reaction too. For a few minutes, we sat there in comfortable silence. Then he asked, "You hiking the full loop?" "I think so," I said, "first time here though." "Same," he replied. I glanced at him. "Alone?" "Yeah." Something about the way he said it made me feel less strange for being there alone too. "I'm Alex," he added, offering his hand. "Ryan." We shook hands. It should have been a small moment, but something about it felt different. Like the beginning of something neither of us expected. We ended up continuing the trail together. At first, the conversation was simple: where we were from, what we did for work, how long we'd been hiking. But the longer we walked, the easier it became to talk. Alex had a calm presence that made people feel comfortable quickly. He listened more than he spoke, but when he did speak, it was thoughtful. At one point, we reached a clearing where the trees opened to reveal a breathtaking view of the valley below. The mountains stretched endlessly into the distance, their peaks fading into a blue haze. "Wow," I said quietly. Alex stood beside me, hands on his hips. "Worth the climb," he said. We stood there for a while, just taking it in. Then he asked a question that caught me slightly off guard. "So, what made you decide to hike alone?" I hesitated. I could have given a simple answer. But something about the moment made honesty feel easier. "Breakup," I admitted. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, that'll do it." "You?" He smiled faintly. "Pretty much the same reason." We both laughed softly. Two strangers on a mountain, both trying to figure out their lives. As the afternoon passed, the trail became steeper. At one point, I slipped slightly on a loose rock. Alex grabbed my arm instinctively to steady me. For a second, neither of us moved. His hand was warm against my sleeve. Then he quickly let go. "Sorry," he said. "It's okay," I replied, feeling strangely aware of the moment. By late afternoon, we reached the highest point of the trail. A wide rocky ledge overlooked the entire valley. The sunset had begun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Guess we timed this perfectly," Alex said. We sat down near the edge, our backpacks beside us. The wind moved gently across the rocks, carrying the scent of pine and distant rain. For a while we didn't talk. It didn't feel necessary. Eventually Alex broke the silence. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." He looked at the horizon for a moment before speaking. "Were you ever scared about being honest about who you are?" I knew exactly what he meant. "Yeah," I said quietly, "for a long time." He nodded slowly. "Same." The sky darkened slightly as the sun dipped lower. Then he added almost casually, "I don't usually talk about this with strangers." "Me neither. But you don't really feel like a stranger." That made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was the mountains, the quiet, the shared honesty. Or maybe it was just him. When the sun finally disappeared behind the peaks, we both stood up. "Guess we should head back before it gets dark," Alex said. The trail down felt shorter somehow. We talked and laughed more easily now, like old friends instead of people who had just met hours earlier. By the time we reached the parking lot, the sky was deep blue and filled with stars. We stood beside our cars for a moment. Neither of us seemed ready to leave. "Well," Alex said with a small smile, "this was a pretty good hike." "Yeah," I agreed. Then he hesitated slightly. "So, would it be weird if I asked for your number?" I laughed. "I was actually hoping you would." We exchanged phones and saved our contacts. Before getting into his car, Alex looked at me and said something that stayed with me long after that night. "You know, sometimes life changes direction in the most random places." I smiled. "Like on a hiking trail." "Exactly." We said goodbye and drove away in opposite directions. But as I drove back toward the city, something inside me felt lighter. I had gone into the mountains alone, hoping to clear my mind. Instead, I met someone who changed my path in a way I never expected. And sometimes the most important journeys begin with a single step on a trail you almost didn't take.